Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call the regular meeting of Township Council agenda for Monday, March 10th to order. And of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. I'm going to move the agenda slightly modified. I'd like to suggest that we move the delegation from Derek Mitchell to C2 after the Langley Bee Club, and then add the late delegation from Beverly Rasmussen as C6. So I'll move that as amended, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on the agenda as amended? Seeing none, call the question on A1. That carries unanimously. I get a motion to adopt the minutes from the regular council meeting of February 24th, moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Call the question on B1. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to adopt the public hearing meeting minutes of February 24th, moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Call the question on B2. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to adopt the special council meeting minutes of February 28th, moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on B3? Call the question on B3. And that carries unanimously. So we'll start with our first delegation from Brian Jones.
How would you like to help put cheaper food on local tables, help stave off a species collapse, and beautify the township? Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and fellow councilors. My name is Bryn Jones, and I am currently president of the Langley Bee Club. I have some history and problems and a solution to share with you. History records that a Reverend Dunn brought honeybees to Langley in 1877. And by 1900, these honeybees were all throughout the township. Mr. Dunn had, or Reverend Dunn had, shared his expertise and begun beekeeping. Further records show that Langley beekeepers had formal meetings in 1923. Our beekeepers partnered to help each other, and we'd like partnership help from you. Our club's mission has been to promote best beekeeping practices. We meet every month to hear from experts about bee research, all in an effort to keep our bees alive and healthy. For over 100 years, we've had a respected reputation for beekeeping excellence and volunteerism in the service of improving beekeeping knowledge, pollinating crops, producing thousands of pounds of honey annually, and generating agricultural dollars for our community. Honeybees need a variety of flowers, spring, summer, and fall, so each colony can store away about 40 to 50 pounds just so that they can stay alive and survive the winter. However, for the past 30 years, there's been a marked decline in pollinators. Scientists worldwide have raised alarms about dying pollinators essential to our food security. They are calling for measures to protect pollinators of all kinds, including both managed and wild bees, even birds, bats, flies, and beetles. What's killing these pollinators? Well, it's habitat destruction, pesticides, invasive species, disease, pests, and sadly, even human indifference. And it's not in some far-off Timbuktu place where not affecting us. It's here in the Fraser Valley, and it's here in Langley. 30 or 40 years ago, for example, I could expect to lose 10 or 15% of my beehives over the course of the winter. Now, our provincial apiarist tells us the regular rate is 25 to 30% throughout the Fraser Valley. It's an unsustainable loss that is really affecting all beekeepers. And sadly, I have to tell you that some are even losing up to 90 and 100% of their bees. Habitat loss is a major factor in this diminished bee health, and the township could help mitigate habitat loss through thoughtful planning, planting, and policy. Scientists recognize that implementing small positive changes can have a big effect on the health of the bee colonies. And the way to do that, one way to do that, is to follow the suggested recommendations of Bee City Canada to have the township declared a bee city. In line with the township's own sustainability charter, becoming a bee city would protect endangered species, enhance wildlife habitat, respect our rural character and heritage, strengthen the agricultural economy and stewardship. Bee cities, you see, create, maintain, and improve pollinator habitat, creating a positive impact on the plight of our pollinators. In joining other Canadian bee cities, we would be doing our best to help the bees and specifically addressing the sustainability charter within the township. So remember that question I asked you at the outset about putting food on tables and staving off the decline of a species and beautifying the township too. Becoming a bee city would do all of those things. And the Langley Bee Club, supported by LEPS and the Farmers Institute here today, is asking you to pursue Bee City Canada membership. So thank you, Mayor Woodward and councillors. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Yeah, I have a couple questions from council. Councillor Kuntz.
Yeah, thank you, Bren. Thanks for your presentation and welcome to all our Langley Bee people here. So what would be one of the policies that might help to support the pollinators? What would be a change or just something that we want to know that we're doing in the township?
Well, one of them could be planting on roadway medians, not just grass, but plants that are sprinkled with seeds of the kind of low flowers, or low-level flowers that require not too much maintenance, that would be tremendous sources of food for the bees. It's the bees' lack of flowers that's a big problem. So that's
Awesome.
one thing.
And is there a cost to becoming a bee city?
In year one, Bee City Canada says no cost at all. In year two, it's a sort of a sliding scale, and I think if our population is over 100,000 people, they ask for $500 a year. And what does that get you? It gets you a liaison with the people who are the experts in the kinds of plantings and things that we can do in the civic arena to help. And it's something that is happening with many cities around Canada, Richmond, Revelstoke, Delta, and yeah, they've adopted this, and helping the bees is a good thing.
Okay. I do have a referral motion maybe after questions or more questions. So.
Okay, great. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how do we officially become a bee city? Who do we apply to?
We apply to Bee City Canada,
Yeah.
and what is they among other things, they ask you to declare that some department in the township would become the liaison people, and they ask you to pick one person within that township department to liaise with them and come up with plans that will help, and that's. Oh yeah, sitting beside me here is Jenny Campbell. Her mom and dad are longtime beekeepers, and she happens to be an expert in the plantings and is very willing to help with any recommendations for township staff. But I think it's well done on the website, and there are some other things that I found online that would be useful to send to a staff person to help with the Bee City connection.
Okay, and do you know in other communities, is the staff liaison from a particular department, or do we need to create a new bee department?
Oh,
No?
pardon me, you don't need to create a new department. I've been speaking with the Delta person who does that, and she, well, I can't remember her particular title in her job, but it's something to do with planning. I can't tell you more than that. But yeah, it didn't require a new bee person.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time today, and I think it's a wonderful idea. Thanks for bringing it forward to us.
Thanks, Councillor Richter, and thank you all.
Councillor Bailey?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, may I maybe approach your councillors and give you each a jar of honey from our local?
I don't think anyone would object to a free jar of honey, so please go
If I
ahead.
could,
I do have
Yeah.
more. I do have more questions. So you want to do that at the end? How about we do that at the end? Yeah.
yeah, just
Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
before you head away, I always know when spring's coming on my property when the bees are in the crocuses. And I would love to find those bumblebees where they hide with all my lavender stuff. I would love to get my hands on that. I'm really glad to hear your suggestion about creeping thyme and other ones like that. I went to war with Surrey years ago about trying to get practical plants planted in the boulevards and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, if we could get a list of the plants that would be beneficial, we don't have to worry. I can cut my dandelions because we've got lots of flowers at my place all year. So, yeah, I'd love to get a list of the plants that we could use, you know, like even down to rosemaries and all those other ones.
Jenny, would you like to speak about that? Because she's really the expert in our club.
And just to confirm, Councillor Bailey didn't go to war with Surrey. He
Yes,
was very.
oh, I did.
It was
Believe
very-
me, one of the
was-
staff and I exchanged nasty words.
It was very positive, constructive advocacy. But go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in beekeeping, we always say don't sting until you absolutely have to.
Oh, I stung. Yeah.
But we actually did bring a handout today, and included in the handout is a list of bee-friendly plantings. Oftentimes, we forget that trees do double duty. They feed birds, they feed bees, they feed other creatures, and they also beautify our cities. So there's also included a list of trees for bees in there as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, thank you for coming. Bryn, Mr. Jones, I have a hard time calling you that. I've known you since back in the Langley rugby days. I did want to say to you, I thought the Beatles wrote a song called Let Her Be. Oh. Anyway, my more serious question, in the bee business, I think a lot of things are being asked already. There's the predators that go after the honeybees, and I realize the honeybees had a declining challenge with predators coming. Can you help me out with that particular question?
Yeah. You're talking, I think, about the Asian giant hornet?
Yes.
And that came
Any
came to
other
BC
predators
a couple
of
of
the
years
bee?
ago. Yeah. I should tell you, my son works at the Delta port as a longshoreman.
Mhm.
And I was speaking to him about the invasive species we have, and I said, thank goodness that the Canadian food inspection people are at the borders checking on things. He says, Dad, don't buy it. He said, when they open up the hatches on these freighters, the bugs and the bees that are coming out in the summertime from all over the world
Yeah.
is substantial. And yeah, 35, 40 years ago, we didn't have a pest called the Varroa destructor mite. It's a parasite that has moved across North America and now is a problem for every beekeeper in North America. It wasn't here then, and it is now. And the Asian giant hornet, our bee club members are on guard watching their colonies yearly to see, well, not yearly, every year we're on watch. Last year was another pest called a small hive beetle we had to look after. Yeah, the problems for honeybees these days are substantial, and it's really difficult to keep colonies going over the year.
Anyway, thank you very much, and I appreciate your delegation. Looking forward for the potential for us becoming a bee community.
That'd be terrific.
God
Thanks.
bless you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and thanks very much for the presentation. I was curious, Councillor Bailey was talking about the different types of plants and flowers that he has, and I'm curious to see what's in the pamphlet you're going to hand out. But for those of us who our space is a little bit more limited on the patio that we've got, is there on the website or in the materials that you provide any sort of education or resources for those people who don't have, property to plant and help the pollinators, but want to do something on their patio, maybe plant the right type of flowers, like in the hanging baskets? Is there any kind of education that you guys have on that front?
I'm going to let Jenny answered that one. I should tell you that part of my bee work is putting bees in properties of all sorts around the lower mainland, including balconies. And yeah, pretty much if you have flowers, you're going to be helping the bees. There are some flowers that aren't very beneficial, like the ornamental flowering cherry trees often have been bred so that they don't have the pollen parts on the flower. They look beautiful, lots of petals, but it's something to be mindful of if you ever go to a garden store, that you should have a look at the recommendations on the provincial agriculture site, and that will have a list of plants that are beneficial to bees, and there's a whole bunch that aren't. But yeah, there's something to be careful about. Yeah, Jenny?
Just in brief, too, a lot of seed packets and people who grow plants actually put the bee-friendly symbol on those. That's really helpful to consumers. The other thing to recognize is that bees will fly up to 5 kilometers in search of food. If it smells good, it probably tastes good, so that's another thing to think about. And if it's in a small space, we often say just use herbs, because then you can benefit from the food supply as well. And they're very tasty to honeybees, all the flowers that they produce.
Good to know. Appreciate it.
Councillor Rint?
I just want to throw a plug out there. So I run my grandpa's blueberry farm, and we recently lost our person that brings out their hives. They run them in Surrey. They probably have like 6 or 7 hives. And for the last couple of years, I haven't been able to find anybody. So if anybody's willing to set up on a 15-acre blueberry farm and help pollinate the berries, reach out to me.
Thank you, Councillor Rint. It just so happens that we have one of Canada's premier researchers, Heather Higo, here, who lives in Langley. She's done a lot of research about bees in blueberry fields and honeybees, and the effects that fungicides and things have on them. And it's not all good news.
No, and we don't spray at all, so we're not certified organic, but I don't spray.
Well, all right, I'll remember your name, Councillor Rint. Give you a call.
Yeah, and I had a look at the website and the PDF that was downloaded, the handbook, I believe it was called. So I had a look through that this morning, and certainly appreciated some of the ideas in there in the framework, and for municipalities across the country sort of signing on to this. And I think for what you identified already is a pretty modest annual cost. So I'm hopeful that if Councillor Kunst has a referral, that it includes us signing on to that and helping support the advocacy, if nothing else, and seeing if the bureaucracy can review the changes that could be made for making some simple improvements. Since we plant plants already, perhaps we can look at some adjustments. So certainly appreciate you bringing this to us, and so far it sounds like a pretty fantastic initiative, and obviously very important given the significant rural areas and farming community that we have here in the Township of Langley. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think they'll take that honey now. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So I'd just like to, I have a motion here that council refer the bee presentation to staff to work with the Langley Bee Club on what is needed to be a designated bee city.
Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the motion speaks for itself. It sounds like this is something that the township would really benefit from. And I think it would encourage other municipalities to do the same thing, as I ran into someone from Surrey today who was from a bee club and that really wants to have Surrey be designated a bee city. So,
Okay. Any other discussion? No, seeing none, I'll call the question on C1. That carries unanimously. So again, thank you very much for that here today. So we'll move on to the next delegation. C5 became C2. So Derek Mitchell from the Kwantlen Lands, Resources and Stewardship. Please come forward. Yeah.
oh, I'm still on speaker.
There you go. Great, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Just want to say thank you for the time and opportunity to speak before Mayor Woodward and council staff today. We're from Kwantlen First Nation. My name is Tumi Anat. My traditional name is Spalalt. I'm a council member with Kwantlen First Nation. I'm blessed to be here with our chief, Stakwasan, Chief Marilyn Gabriel, my colleague Derek Mitchell, who oversees our lands department at Kwantlen, and also we have Aaron Marshall looking after our community programs and services at Kwantlen, and we have Ali Keetla as well, one of our staff members at Kwantlen. We're here, we wanted to talk just briefly about the Bedford Channel and dredging needs that our community is working towards. And we've been very grateful. We've had a number of discussions that we have been having on this topic. We've recently reached out to council members of the Township of Langley and have provided a little bit more context. And I know that our staff, both of Kwantlen First Nation as well as staff of the Township of Langley, are also working, sort of looking at some of the technical aspects of what would potentially be involved of dredging the Bedford Channel. So I'm just going to provide just a small bit of background. Obviously, where Kwantlen First Nation, where our main reserve land is located on McMillan Island in Fort Langley, we're separated from Fort Langley by the Bedford Channel. The Bedford Channel is a very important part of our history and our connection to our land. It's an area that our fishers have used for many generations. It's an area where we have our docks, and many of our fishing vessels are, again, that's their main entry point in and out when it is fishing season. We have acknowledge that dredging and the carrying of the river around us is part of our responsibility as Kwantlen First Nation people. Many of our elders carry stories with them of going out on the river at different times of the year and doing what needs to be done to clean up if there's debris that's gathered, cleaning that up, if there's making a day of it or making a week of it in terms of going out when it's appropriate to do that sort of thing. In years past, Grand Chief Joe Gabriel also arranged for some dredging to take place on the island on a frequent basis. There was a arrangement that was in place for many years where annually there would be dredge material that would be brought up. We had a very serious problem at the time of erosion. We've since had some pretty significant armoring around the top end of our island, so thankfully that is not as drastic as it once was. But the dredging helped. It was an annual activity that occurred that basically built up land that would then get it would wash away, and then we'd sort of refill the land up again. But there's always this acknowledgement of our connection of land around us and again, wanting to support and work with others to try to do what needs to be done to protect land and protect infrastructure. The Bedford Channel is infilling at really remarkable rate. It's certainly something that we have all noticed. I think Fort Langley residents, as well as obviously our community members, are really noticing the channel silt in over time. Dredging hasn't taken place on the Bedford Channel for approximately 20 years or so. The last time dredging took place was when the Bedford Landing housing developments were built. And there was a arrangement and a partnership that developed involving Kwantlen First Nation and several other levels of government. It was a bringing together of the Township of Langley, Kwantlen First Nation, different ministries, Ministry of Environment, Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I think we even had the Coast Guard involved. All the different folks with jurisdiction coming together to try to work out a solution for dredging. Part of the original plan of having that dredging work done, and part of the studies that were done originally, was that this is a constant issue that needs to be given attention to. It needs regular dredging. The sort of one-offs of the 20 years ago and then nothing happening creates more infill. And it becomes a situation of what's happening now, where the channel, at some points of the year, you literally can walk across the channel. Our vessels are not able to access in and out of the channel because at some points of the year the silt is just too high. We get very concerned as well at Kwantlen First Nation at this time of year, freshet time. Our island at McMillan Island is very vulnerable to flooding, and we're always sort of biting our nails at this time of year in terms of just, the combination of weather and snowpack and all of those combinations that can create a flooding situation, and the fact that the channel as well is filled with silt provides an extra concern, because if we get a freshet and high water, where's the water going to go? Well, it's going to come directly onto our island, and we're very vulnerable with it's our main reserve where our houses and community assets are located. So we've been working on building a plan forward for dredging on the Bedford Channel. There has been some conversations and work that's been happening between technical staff from Kwantlen First Nation as well as engineering staff of the Township of Langley, trying to figure out what the best plan is going forward for dredging. I think there is an agreement that dredging is required, and dredging would be a good solution. There are obviously fisheries windows that we have to be very mindful of, so there's only a certain period of time when dredging activity can take place to minimize any sort of damage. And there's permits that are required with Ministry of Environment to fulfill as well as part of this process, and Department of Fisheries and Oceans as well. So we're kind of working through those processes to have all of that in place. What is preventing this from moving forward, unfortunately, is resources. And so we are looking for building support within the community of bringing different levels of government together to try to support the costs of the dredging material. I'm going to get Derek to help me a little bit, because there's some technical details in terms of the volume of material that would come forward from the dredge. Often one of the big costs when there's a dredging project is, where does materials go? And the big cost is the trucking and the transport of those dredged materials to a suitable location. At Kwantlen First Nation, I mentioned that we have flood issues. We have the reality of our island is we're on very low ground. In order to build and keep our buildings safe, we have to have a minimum building elevation. We are looking in the near future to be building a new subdivision area on the island for our community residents, and we're working with the Department of Indigenous Services for some funding support for that kind of work, as well as the nation's own resources. But there is a need for sand fill material to come directly on the island. So in terms of being able to quickly and without much transport involved, to be able to utilize the dredge material, that certainly is something that Kwantlen could make very good use of that material, and that helps to reduce the cost involved in the dredge. We've been there's estimates of what the dredging cost is, and I might just ask Derek if he can kind of fill in some of those details, as well as the volume of the sand.
Sure. Thanks, Tumia. So the report that was done in coordination with Township indicated there's about 150,000 cubic meters of material, which it's actually a huge amount. It's about half the amount of material that is required for the subdivision. And in terms of the pricing, if the material is disposed of sea, which is the other place that you would dispose of it, it's about $6 million to do the entire dredging. If Kwantlen takes the material, it's $2.3 million. So it is significantly less. And what Kwantlen is, Tumia, Councillor Knott asked earlier, is what we're hoping today is to find some support with Township, where we're looking at this window of coming up in November 20 this year is the next opening for the fish window to be able to do this kind of work. And we need to try and have something put in place in the very near future in order to not miss that window. We've been working, again, with Township staff to make sure that we have the license available. It's just support that we need. I think, yeah.
I'm acting taller than him. Good afternoon. Chief Marilyn Gabriel, Kwantlen First Nation. My traditional name is Stakwasan. Thank you for allowing us to come and share a bit of ourselves and our history with everyone in this room. I wanted to remind us, too, that we're all responsible for this. The last time we talked was in former Albert's time, in the late Mark Warwa's time. We had a big table, but it didn't start so well. When it comes to environment or anything with the water or anything, they look at us, but I'm looking at you. We all have responsibility to that water. Fort Langley wouldn't be what it is without that channel and without that river. I have to speak for our Finn ones. Fresh at time, my late father used to tell us that channel would be full, would be perfect for young people to get out to learn about the water, and they'd fish in that channel. Without that water in there, and the water being so warm, the fish don't go in there anymore. They don't have anywhere to rest. They don't rest, and they can't get through and get past to go to the spawning ground. There's history to everything. And even with the river, since ferry's been gone and all that we're infilling. We have more sandbars out there than we ever thought we would. But it affects everything of who we are as a people. Fishing is part of who we are. I'll say it's part of our DNA. And we are watching and seeing less and less salmon. All the species. We used to go out there February to the end of September. Now we're going, if we can, by hours. Hours that our fishermen had lived on a river all their lives. They're over 80, and they have only hours in the river. And we all have to do something. We all have to save that channel. We all have to be accountable and responsible to that water. The river is very important to all of us. So I just needed to share a little bit of why we're here. And there's the technology part, but there's a heart of us too. That is who we are. I think that is why we lost so many of our older fishermen, because they didn't get their medicine and get out in the river that they did all their lives. And if you're fishermen and we're commercial fishermen, your families, you'd know and understand that feeling. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I thank you for listening. I hope you can hear us through your hearts. This is for everybody. We don't think of it for ourselves. It's everybody. We're all responsible. We all have to be accountable. It's not just the First Nations. It's everybody. So I thank you for your time. Awesome.
Do you have any concluding remarks? Because I have a couple questions from council. We can go to those. Yeah. Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for coming, CM. I remember going way back in the meeting as a young councillor, Grand Chief Joe Gabriel, and I would hope and think and pray that we've had a good working relationship with the Kwantlen for many years, and that includes not just the mayors we've worked with, but the councillors and the senior staff. And I know that even through difficult times when you did have a flood, people from the community helping with sandbags and other things. And I think it's important that you're working with our staff. We're not starting fresh here. We're working and moving ahead, and that's very important. And I think that as we proceed accordingly, I understand that the federal government's involved, provincial government's involved. I did my homework. I've been on the both email and phone with Metro Vancouver Parks, because they do have a stake in this as well. And I think the community at large as well. I'm sure that there's people, residents, and also people who are financially stable. I'm talking about very wealthy people that may indeed want to contribute as well to. But the one question I think I would have right now today, are you absolutely certain that you can get fisheries approval to dredge the actual channel, if I may?
Yeah, they were at a meeting with us a little over, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and they've said that if we get the application in soon, that they should be able to meet the November deadline.
Anyway, thanks. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yes, and I want to thank you both very much, and Chief Gabriel, for your hospitality and for bringing that table together. It was extremely informative. I know I learned a lot, and I thank you for coming and sharing with the others as well today. We talked at that table about the 150 million cubic meters of sand as sort of being a mountain. And is there room for that mountain on your island? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 150,000 cubic meters.
Oh, 150,000, okay.
Yeah, the development that Councillor Knott referenced needs about 300,000 cubic meters. So yeah, absolutely. We need to go up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Richter, the history you need to know when we had the dredging back in the day, the sand was supposed to be split between the developer and Kwantlen, but the developer didn't have enough sand to bring their land up for flooding.
Right.
So we didn't get anything.
Oh, okay.
We never received anything from that
Okay.
big development across where the mill was.
Right.
So I want you to know the history, and we've never received anything from that river.
So, but you can take the full 100 and,
It's all marked.
yep, okay. Thank you. And one of the other things we talked about that morning, and it was good to have the DFO representatives there as well as the Ministry of Environment representatives, is that the window for this year is November to October, and the paperwork, we all have to work to getting that paperwork done and in so DFO can process it in time for the dredging this year. So my question is, would a letter of advocacy and support from Township Council to DFO and the Ministry of Environment, as well as to yourselves, be helpful to receive? Yeah.
Yeah, I think all demonstrations of support are helpful, and yes, we are working to ensure that we get all the proper permitting through Ministry of Environment and Department of Fisheries and Oceans with the technical people involved, and there's specific requirements to each of those processes, but we're working to get that done as quickly as we can to ideally meet that window, which would start this fall. I think the window starts November and then goes to like January or February. Goes to February, so that's kind of the window of when this work can take place.
Right. And we also talked a lot about how the river is so well used now by many user groups, a lot of them coming from the urbanized area on this side of the river.
Very busy
Yeah.
channel. Yeah, always lots of
cost
activity.
sharing is probably a very good idea for us to look at. So my next question is, do we need to have the money secured and in place before the permits will be issued? Or can we move forward with getting those permits issued and worry about the money a little later?
Yeah, we can have the money follow the permits. So once we have there's a license from Waterlands, Resources, and Stewardship from the province.
Yeah.
And then there's a permit from DFO. Once those are in place, then the work can take place, and the money is for the work. If the work doesn't happen, there's no financial commitment to the permit or to the license.
Okay. Thank you again for your hospitality on the 28th. It was a privilege to be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, sorry I missed the 28th. I was down in Mexico, and I'd rather have been in Fort Langley. One, I'm glad to hear that you can take all the material. My question is going forward, it sounds like you're going to be able to take more material. So would that be part of your presentation, saying if we're looking at a regular schedule of dredging, we've already got a place where we could deposit the material? I'm correct? And that sounds like, because this will be a bigger load than normal, you'd be able to do a few dredges and still maintain it on your island. Here's a question that gets to everyone. The land that you're going to put that material on, you said is swampland? Marshland? That would probably help with the mosquitoes too, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, as I hate those things.
Yeah.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, thanks again for the invitation to come and just talk about this. I'm reminded as we look at the pictures on the back wall, and sometimes when we come in here, maybe we've seen it all the time, but it's just a real great reminder of how important the Bedford Channel is to us. And I had a question about the Fraser Valley has what they call a diking authority. And I know that this dredging issue has kind of fallen through the cracks over the last 20 years. Would there be any, is there anything, any plans to maybe, if we can get this to happen, that maybe in the future, I mean, governments change, councillors change, mayors change, that, that this issue stays in the forefront so that we don't, run into this again 20 years from now?
That really is our ideal, is wanting to ensure that we have, that we're bringing different groups and folks together with interest and jurisdiction in this area for the betterment and protection of the Bedford Channel and the area around it, but that there is a consistent plan so that it's, as you say, so that it isn't another 20-year gap before this issue potentially is even worse in that situation with other impacts as well. So part of the plan is very much looking at, yes, we have an urgent need to do right now, but what do we need, what is the frequency that we may need to look at dredging so that we're not getting into a bigger issue down the road.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah. Hello, and thank you, and welcome. And I know it's been said, I will say it again. I really want to thank you for welcoming us and your hospitality and the open conversations that we were able to have at those couple of meetings. I really enjoyed my time there. The last meeting we were at, it was great to see not just a bunch of elected officials at the table, but also the staff, the people, you know, doing the work behind the scenes, township staff and provincial and federal and Kwantlen, all of you. And it's just, I admire that everything's happening. There's so many moving parts here, but we are moving towards something. And the Bedford Channel really is the jewel of Fort Langley, and we need to preserve that. And it was interesting, even though there's a lot of logistics involved in getting this to happen, and I don't remember which staff it was provincial or federal, commented that this is actually a relatively routine ask to do the dredging. So it's just getting through this process. This isn't some monumental, never happened before kind of thing. So I think there is an expectation that there really shouldn't be any hiccups if we can just check off all the boxes to get this done right. And my takeaway from the meeting was the outstanding piece that's not already in the hands of the staff who are doing all this good work is the funding for the actual activity of getting the channel dredged. So those are my takeaways, and then that with a follow-up maintenance plan that we don't find ourselves here again. Although I hope that I can still come visit you now and again. So thanks again. Thank you for this, and I really enjoyed this connection and this dialogue.
Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yes, just very, very quickly. I was just thinking, again, the mural up there by the Atkins, both Phyllis and Drew and their family. And if you look closely, there's pictures of a bunch of people. And it's very, very creative. But my question this goes back to too much history again. After the province built the bridge, or Translink built the bridge, the ferry terminal was decommissioned, and you've had the opportunity to use that. So my question, because since fishing is so important, and salmon, are they able to dock there where they don't have to go into because I've come off a friend of mine, I've actually come off your dock there. But the new, where now the ferry terminal, are you able to use that for your fishing boats and your fleet?
We utilize both areas, so both within the channel, and then there's also the dock that's on the main stem of the Fraser. So they are used, well used by Kwantlen fishers and community members on both sides. Yeah, it's a lot of an access issue for folks that need to go and work on their vessel or do different maintenance chores, that sort of thing. So and preference and family connections to their docks are in a certain area. So
the reason why I'm asking, because it's this tidal there, and I'm not much of a boater, but I know a little, and there'll be less tidal on the other side where that ferry terminal, and using that side. So you use that as well, because that would be, especially during fishing season, be able to get on the boat and just get out. Those are just my questions.
Yeah, one of the historical issues with the outside part of the island and keeping boats there has been theft. So theft and safety. On the inside, it's safer for them to do it, and they less get stolen off their boats. On the open river side, they've seen a lot more theft.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. And no, there's no other questions from Oh, go ahead. All right. Yeah, of course.
Hi. The other piece to the outside in the river is that our people, before fishing, like Toomey had mentioned, they go and take out the debris that's in there where they're gonna set their nets. And they take all that out. Like you said, it takes about a week. They all come together, they do that. It's an annual thing. But also what they do, and I witnessed it probably a month ago, there's big, is it towboats? Yeah. They were right around where the ferry used to be, and they just revved their motor up, and it just stirred the sand to try to move it out to keep it, the depth in there. So people are doing it on their own. It's an annual thing, just like everything else. You have to have things done by a certain time. The old-time fishermen know what they have to do. But again, less and less fishing, less and less boats out there, more harder to keep it clear all the way down there where they drift. So that becomes a problem. Even we're watching outboard motors in the in the channel, the little boats grounding themselves. And that's with nobody on it. You know, it's really dangerous. And we watch everyone, we're like that. Because they come flying in, or even those little jet skis, and we're like, oh my God. You know, I don't want a death before something happens. And since you're a liaison, you know, I'm hoping you'll take charge of everything. You're a liaison for Indigenous, that I'm going to ask you to take charge of these things. And
I'll certainly do my part. My liaison is basically a representative to Metro Vancouver.
Well, that's
It's a
your
big
voice.
organization.
Yeah, well,
but
that's
I can
a voice.
certainly be a voice.
Voice that we don't have.
I can be a, well,
Okay.
you,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, no, I think other speakers from council, I think it's obviously a pretty important issue, which is why council's been working on it for a long time to advance the application and hire the consultants required to make the application. So I think we take it with great urgency and appreciate your delegation here today to make everyone aware of the urgency and to advocate to council to try to advance it as quickly as possible. And I appreciate that very much. All right, thank you.
We're very grateful for the support, so thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next delegation. Now, we have 4 delegations on the same topic. Does each person wish to delegate individually, or could all 4 wish to delegate at the same time? Either one is fine with us. But the first delegation filed was from Darren Chan. Yeah, thanks for coming today, and introduce yourself to council, and then go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Darren Chan. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for your time in accepting my delegation request and offering the opportunity to speak openly and freely. I'm addressing you today as a stakeholder in the Bell Park neighborhood, a community member, and as a father of 2 young children. When my family moved to Brookswood in the township of Langley 5 years ago, my wife and I were drawn to the trees, the quiet streets, and the park that was 5 homes down from where we live. We'd often joke, telling each other it was like moving back to our childhood. Yards to run in, trails to bike in, and parks to play in. Living here since 2020 with our then 3-year-old son and newborn daughter, we have used Bell Park almost daily. Sun, rain, snow, cold, it's never deterred us from going. We met neighbors who've turned into really good friends. Our children have formed lasting friendships with others, all of which were made possible by this very special place for us. Bell Park holds many memories, not only for my family, but also for many others who have used this space for their own children, and some even their grandchildren. Bell Park is a residential park. The purpose of a residential park serves as a green space with a residential area, providing residents with access to outdoor recreational amenities like playgrounds, walking paths, picnic areas, and sometimes even community gardens, all designed to enhance the quality of life and promote a healthy, active lifestyle within the community. Building a cricket pitch in the middle of the field and dedicating that space to a specific club from March through September between the hours of 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays creates a space less inclusive for all local park users. I respectfully disagree with the response I received from the park's design and development manager, who suggested the playground is considered a safe distance from the pitch. After researching about the game of cricket, I no longer feel confident in bringing my children to the park if there's a practice or there's a game being played. I worry that the proximity from the pitch to the playground and walking paths are far too close, and that one of them could be struck by a cricket ball. In May of 2023, my wife Heather wrote to you, Mayor Woodward, about this space being more accessible and more inclusive. Quote, I am writing to you specifically as I voted for you in the past election. I am a new resident in Langley and believe you will accomplish a lot in your role as mayor of Langley Township. I am hoping among all the many things on your agenda that you might consider adding accessible playground features and equipment at some of our local parks in the near future. My current neighborhood is Bell Park, and while it is beautiful, it is a beautiful, well taken care of community space. I would love to see a piece of equipment added to this park to make it an inclusive, universal play space for all children. I believe you can push for this from your current role with the knowledge that accessibility is a human right. Children have the right to play, and play is integral to a child's growth and development. Therefore, all parks should feature some type of equipment for play that all children have access to. My hope is you can help see this through, and if you need more input from a mother, educator, disability activist, I would be more than happy to connect further. Mayor Woodward, you were gracious enough to respond to my wife directly and forwarded the email to the appropriate senior staff member. Aside from the cricket pitch, we are incredibly pleased to see the upgrades being done to the walking paths, which surround Bell Park. Upgrades that make the park more accessible and inclusive, all of which you had mentioned in your response to her and have since followed through on. We, along with many others, feel like the money the township put towards the cricket pitch could have been used to further upgrade the park to making it more accessible. So differently abled people have access to all the park's amenities. The installation of a disc swing, as mentioned in my wife's email to the park's director, would be a perfect addition for children who use a wheelchair or walker, enabling them to play on the playground as well. There's an online petition with 350 signatures and counting, along with this signed petition by those who use or reside near Bell Park. Currently, it has 239 signatures ongoing, plus the 350 signatures online. Both of these petitions are ongoing. Like I said, each handwritten signature represents a conversation had by me or my concerned neighbors. All of these community members agree with the executive summary that I believe you had emailed to you earlier today, that are in favor of having the cricket pitch removed and relocated to a more appropriate location. Just wanted to thank you, Mayor Woodward and councillors, for your time.
So I have no questions, but what we'll do is we'll hear from all 4 delegations, and then if there's other questions, I do have a question now.
Yes, sir.
But for all of them, if the discussion, if there's other points to be touched on, if you just want to confirm you organizing the petition particularly, so if council has questions about that, that would be for you?
We're actually, 3 of us are working on the petition together.
We're working on
Correct.
the petition together. Okay,
Yes.
so that's good clarification. Councillor Martins?
Thank you, and I apologize, I didn't push the button quick enough. Thank you for coming today and delegating, and I know there are other delegations. I just want to ask, as you said, it's a neighborhood park, and it's used by your neighborhood. Can you kind of give me a sense of like what that looks like if there wasn't the cricket pitch there? How would that space be used by people? Because children, in my opinion, don't just play on a playground.
Correct.
What would children and families or seniors, whoever, all ages, what would
Yes.
they be doing on that space?
On that particular space, in very close proximity, there's a children's playground. In front of that playground, there's a walking path that connects a couple streets. In the field of play, I can tell you from experience that kids play on the park, but then kids get sick of playing on the actual playground. They want to roll down the hill that leads onto the soccer field. They want to kick a ball around. Some kids try to fly kites, although I've never seen one successfully flown there. Kids give it a go. Dads are practicing hitting a ball with their kids. And more importantly, kids have an open space to free play and run, which we don't have enough spaces like that.
Thank you. Okay, and I appreciate that visual. That's really helpful for us. Because sometimes it's hard to put metrics to, it's not set times for set sports. This is like, free moving. So are there certain times of day in the past that park would have been busier with families?
I can tell you honestly, we've seen a major increase in park usage because of new families moving into the neighborhood. Honestly, anytime that it's not raining after school, especially on the weekends, it's flooded with new families that are playing with their kids on the park, having a picnic on the field, kids riding their bike around the park, enjoying the green space, walking their dogs in behind Bell Park, I believe on the south side. I believe one of them, I believe, but that's kind of the picture. It's just a really lovely gathering, like a community space that we can all gather to.
Yeah, without any specific programming.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I really thank you. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for painting that picture.
You betcha.
I have another question now.
Okay, sorry.
Went from 0 to 2 here. So go ahead, Councillor Bailey.
Yes, I'd like to really thank you for bringing up the issue of accessible playgrounds. We are starting to look at doing playgrounds and/or smaller spots of it. There's a playground, if you ever want to see one, up in Unwin Park in Surrey, just off 68th and 134. You should go and have a look at that because I have, and it's an incredible playground. I lived with a person who's in a wheelchair for a number of years and can appreciate that kids are left out of those things. Also, I'm really glad to see that there's a lot of interest in here, not just the delegations that are coming, but also a couple of very well planned out presentations. And it's a good thing you did because when this came to a vote on council, I believe it was unanimous. So you have to talk to all of us and tell us what's going on in that park and what your opinions are and your views. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that. I think we don't see unanimous decisions at council very often, and it's important to note that this one, both times, was unanimous with a full council. And so I think it's important to note that from what I've heard from members of council, there's more of an openness to recognizing, that once in a while things may move too fast or mistakes do get made. And it's important to note how is that handled, how is that managed. And I think that it's good to hear from the delegations while we understand that this was a unanimous decision of council.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully unanimously work on a solution. All right.
Very much.
So the next delegation is from Stephen Jansen. Please come forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Good
Go ahead.
afternoon,
Yeah.
Mayor Woodward and councillors. Just thanks for your time. So I'm just speaking on behalf of the local residents that reside around the streets of Bell Park. And I want to speak in terms of the specific inappropriateness of the project based on the cricket game regulation and safety impacts. When I first heard about this proposal, I looked at it through a physical educator mindset or lens perspective and a former athletic director. And the first thing I thought when a cricket field or a cricket pitch in the current residential park does not make sense, just based on the magnitude of the size of the field. And so I had looked and watched when the proposal was accepted or agreed on, and I didn't hear any dialogue on the appropriateness of the field. And so what I wanted to do was come in and just kind of share about the game, share about the regulations, so that people are aware of what is required to play a proper cricket game. And so firstly, the dimensions required for a cricket match are non-congruent with the size of the grass field at the park. Cricket fields are typically between 450 and 500 feet in diameter. The cricket pitch is not where the game is confined to the small pitch, but the game extends much further than the cricket pitch strip, as seen in the diagram below. And so I don't know if I handed to, are we allowed to pass, just to,
I believe it's been provided to
it has.
council.
I just printed it out if you guys, okay.
No, council, I believe, was emailed a copy of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so I think
okay,
we have it, and I've reviewed it, and it was very well put together.
Okay, thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Yeah.
And so there's an infield and there's an outfield, and the game's not even restricted to that outfield line. I mean, the ball can be hit outside of that as if sort of like a home run in baseball. And so the entire space, it's 11 on 11, and so therefore it's a 360-degree game where in the second diagram, where the positioning of the players, it takes up the entire field. And so then I took the third picture was more of what would be more of a realistic location for such a cricket field with surrounding openness area for the ball to be, and for the game to be safely played. And So secondly, the official cricket dimensions are ensure safety as a sport is very dangerous. Bell Park does not have the size field required. Below are the facts of the sheer danger of the game and for bystanders playing at the park, more specifically kids playing in the structure. As Darren describes, kids will just on the whim decide to sprint across the field, and there's no holding back, and when they understand the field, the underfield is what we were describing of an open play, open canvas, informal play. But then also people riding bikes, people are walking dogs. At any point, people may not understand that the game is 360. It's not baseball where you're hitting it between first and third base, right? A batter can turn and strike it a certain way. And so the cricket ball is very hard and potentially lethal. So most of today's batters and close fielders often wear protective equipment. So when you watch them play, usually a batter will almost look like what we would see as a goalie with pads, also have a face mask, and even some of the infield players are wearing protective gear where bystanders would not have any protective gear. Cricket ball injuries are fairly frequent, and then just doing some further research, including eye, with some players having lost eyes, head and face, finger and toe, teeth, and testicular injuries. The force of the ball when hits a bat is enough to lift a car off the ground. The force on the ball slows it down to a stop and then accelerates it in the opposite direction in a very short amount of time. In men's cricket, the ball must weigh between 5.5 and 5.75 ounces and have a circumference of between 8 and 13/16 and 9 inches. So it's larger than a baseball and a lot harder than a baseball. As mentioned, the cricket ball can be played 360, meaning batters do not hit a specific zone, such as baseball, but rather turn and hit the ball in any direction. Cricket bats have become thicker. The ball can now be hit well over 100 meters, that's 300 feet before touching the ground. It is evident that we have very serious safety concerns as residents of the park who frequent the park with our families. Kids playing in the park are easily in the zone of being hit by a ball that is so hard and travels at a speed that can be lethal when it strikes someone. This is exactly why such a sport is located in very large athletic parks, not small local residential parks, which poses the serious liability question. Who would be liable if one were to be struck by one of these balls? Thirdly, and lastly, the length of a cricket game. Even for me, just getting in to explore a little bit deeper of the game, but knowing that I knew that games were hours, if not days long, and just looking into that, the length depends on the format of play. So there's different formats, can range from a few hours to several days. In most public spaces, such as tennis courts, there is an etiquette rule that if other people are waiting, then you play one set and play for 30 minutes or rallying, and then someone else can rotate in. It has come to our attention that permission has been given to the Langley Eagles to be allowed to play Saturday and or Sunday from 11 to 6 p.m. From mid-March through September. Therefore, working parents that would like to take their families to the park on weekends will not be able to use the field Saturday and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. for all of spring, summer, and fall, which is the main seasons of park play. In conclusion, a better location such as an athletic park would be more appropriate and better suited for cricket as a small residential park rather than a small residential park. Therefore, we respectfully ask that the current asphalt strip be taken out and the grass be reseeded.
I have a question from council, Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thanks for bringing your concerns. I actually had the opportunity, I saw some of this was kind of coming up, and grabbed my bike and went over to the park. And it's been a while since I've been at Bell Park, but I live in Brookswood, but it's a small little neighborhood park that I know is well used. Can you speak a little bit to the parking that might be needed for, the teams that come and play?
Like one of our other delegates was going to talk about some of the amenities and the lack thereof,
Okay.
but just to speak on it, based on the point that I made about 11 on 11, and then 2 umpires, so you're looking at 25 people need to and plus to watch. There's probably about 6 stalls right beside the curb So there's an indent, and then 6 cars could probably fit there. And that would be the only parking, due to the fact that when Darren defined a residential park, the majority of people are coming by foot, bike, or rollerblades. There's one outhouse, and no one really uses it because if you have to go to the bathroom, you just go back home and come back. And so yeah, that just kind of describes a little bit of the amenities and lack of parking.
Okay, yeah, thank you. As the mayor mentioned, that was a unanimous vote on council, but you know, maybe I didn't take a really good look at this and how it might have impacted the neighbors. So I'm glad that you've come forward and your delegations. So maybe we can have another look at it.
I was just curious, was other members had not seen the park as well, or when a vote was made?
Probably. I'll speak for myself. It'd been a while since I've been to Bell Park.
Okay.
But I think I do remember it came on the agenda, and we probably had about 100 other things that we were also voting on. So I personally didn't give it the time that I needed to maybe go and have a look. So again, I appreciate that, the response from the neighbors, and hopefully we can, I don't know what, but I hope that we can refer it maybe back to staff, or, you know, to have another look at maybe a better spot.
I appreciate that. And I hope you appreciate the research put into it. Just, it's a game that it's not in our top 15 of sports that kids from 5 to 15 play. Many people don't really understand the intricacies of the game. And so, yeah, therefore, if you don't know all the facts, then it is difficult to make, the correct decision. But an athletic park would suit it far better.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I haven't been to Bell Park in a long time too, but I think the piece that I was missing, that I'm very thankful you came today and shared with us, is the dimensions required. I had no idea it's 360-degree play, and it can go way outside bounds. I did not know that, so thank you for sharing that information. I think that puts a different slant on it for me. Now, the question I did have, the asphalt strip that's been put in there, you've asked for it to be removed. Is it something that could be retained for the little kids to play hopscotch on, rollerblade on? Like, could it be used for their purposes instead of ripping it out and reseeding?
Well, sometimes, the kids that are there, they understand the park of play, and it comes elevated off the ground. And so I'm wondering if kids are running, and if the grass is just a little bit higher that day, if it actually just becomes even a further safety issue.
Like a tripping hazard?
A tripper hazing where someone's now, I would say that it would be sort of inappropriate to have, an asphalt space or in the dead middle of the grass field. Perhaps if there was something of that kind of play off to the side, or would make a little bit more sense.
What about if we put up like a basketball hoop? Is it big enough to play basketball on?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for the dimension.
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you. I was down there today, but in voting, I'm like other councillors, I must admit that I wasn't thinking about the dimensions. And so I was doing a little bit of walking. Now, the point I know about Bell Park is similar to my friend Bryn Jones in the Bees. My kids used to play soccer on that field. And my son, there's an adjacent field, used to play baseball. So I'm familiar. They went to Brookswood Secondary in Belmont. Of course, I know the area, and I attend Brookswood Baptist Church, so I'm very familiar with the site, although I haven't been there lately. Other than today. I was walking the field, and I was wondering where the placement of the actual pitch court, and I don't know much about the stuff they put asphalt down on. So it doesn't matter where you hold the racket or what they call that thing. The ball's going to go all sorts of different places. It's a heavy ball. So there's potential I could see, because I was walking and measuring with my, and I know that's coming up later from another Brookswood resident we've known forever, is a ball could actually hit. It could actually hit, number one, the playing field, kids' playing area, the trails that walk through it, and I guess it could actually hit some cars in that parking lot.
And
that's a really good hit, but it's possible.
Yes, and houses as well, yeah.
So my question directly, I'm speculating, have you done any measurements to think that indeed could happen?
Based on, I looked at some old diagrams of the park. They used to actually have soccer field. Right?
Yeah, I
that
know.
Was there.
That part I know.
Yeah, and so there was a little bit of room outside. And that's basically 240 feet, and that's with a little bit of space on each side by the fence and or the park or the pathway was. So that's 240 feet, give or take a little bit more. But we're looking at 400 to 500, and the ball can go 300 feet. So from where it's hitting the strip in the middle of the field. So just doing those simple calculations, that ball is going into that playground.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your submission.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and thanks to everybody for the work and the research into the delegations. And kind of like Councillor Ferguson, somewhat familiar with the park, growing up and going to Belmont and Brookswood myself. I was wondering, in the research that you guys were doing, the mainland cricket league, the league that the team would potentially be joining, with this as their home pitch, have you seen any of the other facilities that any of the other teams play out of? Are they similar to Bell Park in size and sort of layout, or are they predominantly more sort of that athletic facility that you talk about?
Growing up, I remember going to Stanley Park. I lived in Richmond, and they have one in Stanley Park, and it's a lot larger of an area. And so I think when we think of the boundaries lines and the people that might be around, there's just not enough extra space. So when you see where proper games are played.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Bailey?
Having been one of those strange people that has watched a cricket game, it was many years ago, the All-Greek final, I can say that ball will definitely reach the playgrounds, and it will definitely reach if you're looking south, it'll go down there. And even though it involved a bottle of ouzo, I was still able to watch the game, and I went down and saw that yesterday, and definitely that field's not large enough for full cricket. So thanks a ton for coming and making sure that we're doing our due diligence and maybe have a look at this again.
No, I appreciate that, and just reading through the charter, I feel like this is exactly what you guys, the spirit of collaboration and consultation, right? And I think this is fantastic. So thank you for your time. Thank you for collaborating and taking our considerations serious.
Yeah, so again, I appreciate the second of 4 delegations, and I'm going to say the same thing on each one. I appreciate you advancing it, and appreciate the submissions we've received. And I've read them all, and I did a little bit of research. There are different type of cricket leagues and different standards of play and different expectations of the space, but I'm not sure that it matters at this point. If there's even a perceived risk, I'm not sure that even matters. So again, I really appreciate your submission, and thank you again for taking the time to put it together.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
The next delegation, Debbie Moore.
And council, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us and allow us to share our concerns. I am a resident of Brookswood, and my family has lived adjacent. Am I too close?
It'll pick you up.
Adjacent to the park for 20 years. My children grew up enjoying the park well until their teens, until removal of the soccer posts that they would use regularly with their dad and friends. Just one day they were gone, so that was unfortunate. During the course of our time here, we've been daily users of the park and continue to be, and have had the pleasure of observing the many diverse uses of our community park and witnessing a renewed increase in park usage in the past few years. First, I'd like to address lack of infrastructure and amenities, which was touched on a little bit there by Steve. There are inadequate essential services and physical structures required for cricket players and spectators as pertaining to the length of the game particularly. Bell Park has a total of 6 parking stalls, which connect the 2 streets, 205A and B. They line as Steve was saying, they line the curb there, and there's maybe 6 cars can fit there. Sidewalks are essentially non-existent, which poses a potential traffic safety hazard for foot, bike, and scooter traffic to and from the park, which is mainly what we see, not a lot of cars. Street stalls are lacking in Brookswood, with many owners graveling the front of their properties to make room for visiting friends and family, or for extra vehicles as grown children are now driving and they need an extra space to park. Living close to the park for 20 years, I've witnessed a growing number of young families moving into the area and using the park daily. There was a lull between generations when the park was quieter, I will admit. But with a new generation calling Brookswood home, there has been quite a resurgence of the use of the playground and the field, which is a joy to my ears, because I can actually see the field from my deck, and it's front and center, and I'm there every day. Visitors to the park generally walk, bike, rollerblade, or ride their scooters. This is because locally it is known as a residential park with no parking. Cricket has a total, as Steve was saying, of 11 players per side with 2 referees, so you've got 24 people looking for parking. And then when you take into account multiple spares per team, as well as friends, family, and spectators, you could be up to 50 people, and that would be flooding could be overwhelming the surrounding area of Bell Park. Currently, the park has one outhouse toilet, which is clearly meant for emergency use while using the park, as most residents live close enough, they'll just go home if they need to use the bathroom. It really is not intended for citizens outside the neighborhood to stay for the entire day. And like other athletic parks that have the necessary amenities such as sinks and running water. Another consideration I thought of just this morning was garbage, as there is a receptacle at either end of the park, but I just think about larger groups of people and being there for an extended period of time. I'm just wondering if there might be an added need for additional cleanup outside of that after an all-day event, just something to throw out there. And then the second point that I wanted to touch on was lack of information, collaboration, consultation, and transparency, which I can see you are really open to here, and after some of the things you've heard, you're already seeing that. But I've written this, so I'm going to read it. So we believe there was lack of information, though, shared with you, the township, by the Cricket Club, which neglected to include the many dangers of the sport as pertaining to Bell Park layout and usage. Without this information, it's difficult to foresee the impact it would have on the children, families, and individuals that use the park and field daily. We believe that this ultimately resulted in an inefficient allocation of township resources, unfortunately. The residents of Bell Park area want to work collaboratively with the township. And then I did actually provide copies for distribution of the township public engagement charter, and I was just going to quote a couple things out of there. The township commits to strengthening a spirit of collaboration by providing the right information at the right time. So we're disappointed as the residents of the area that a major decision that will change the very character of our small local park was done without any consultation or input from local residents. The public charter also mentions, quote, good planning requires transparent and collective decision-making for the long-term good of the community. Meaningful community engagement during the planning process, especially at the neighborhood level, promotes greater understanding and more responsive decisions, unquote. As previously mentioned, I'm a long-term Bell Park resident, that's 3 times now. I've seen families come and go. Kids who have played at the park who are now adults, parents who are now grandparents, and multiple generations of families using this very special park. As you can see by the many handwritten signatures from residents surrounding Bell Park who concur with the petition and summary, we do not agree with the use of this space as a cricket pitch. Many of us are community builders by occupation, and it is our hope that we can continue to be so fortunate to live in a city that holds strong to community and democratic dialogue and processes. We urge you to please halt the construction of the cricket pitch and move it to a more suitable location. And then just I had one little added thing is I think it's really telling based on the number of signatures that we got from the residents in such a relatively short period of time, like it was about 4 weeks. As to, the frustration around this. And one of the things that I heard the most when I was going door to door to door and standing at the park and just talking to families that were there is just, We just didn't know what was going on. We never heard a thing about this. We all stood and speculated and thought that it was the drainage being addressed because it's kind of poor in the middle of the field. We truly did. That seemed to be the common thing was, oh, but I wonder why it's in that shape. Oh, and it just kind of went from there, and it was just this guessing game, and then we had to reach out and ask ourselves. So, yeah, weren't real thrilled about that. So that's it for me.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No questions from council. Thank you again very
Okay.
much for bringing this
I
forward
think
here today.
Pretty much covered it, didn't we?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next delegation, Beverly Rasmussen.
Thank you, Your Worship, council members. I appreciate being here, and I think my neighbors have pretty much shared everything with you that you need to hear today. There was a couple things. I am a parent and a grandparent of 4 children, little ones that play in the park. I'm a daily user of the park, except for when it's really, really cold. I run in the park, and like I said, my grandkids play there. All of my children are homeowners in Brookswood, and we're really proud to live there. And I'm just down the street from the park. So, also the past president of the Rotary Club of Langley Central, and in my term, I raised $110,000. And one of those projects included building a park. Also the founder of the current Langley BMX track. In 1993, my son needed a place to race his bike. And so I reached out to council, and Bill Lindell at the time said, hey, lady, if you want a BMX track, well, and I looked at Bell Park for putting the track there at the time, but obviously it wasn't suitable. And so I'm really proud to say after 9 years of volunteering and my husband and I working on that, we have a permanent facility, and really appreciate the support from this council for the children of the Langley Township. Thousands and thousands of kids use that BMX park every year. So we know that you're pro-park, and I know that this decision was made in good spirit. There's basically, my neighbors have covered everything I want to talk about. There was 2 things specifically because there was some mention that the park play area might be smaller, that this particular user group said, no, we'll just play sort of like local small cricket. So Brent and I went out and we measured the park. We took the diagram from the report from off the website, and we had a professional who plays cricket, a friend of mine actually in India that plays cricket, and I said we had it placed on here, and then I went to the International Association League rules and found what's the minimum, what's the maximum, what are the rules. I really like to do based on facts, so I'd like to present even at the very smallest cricket play, the cricket pitch still does hit the walkway. And so even though it might not quite hit the children's play area, it's really, really close. So I provided that this morning for you to have a look at that diagram. I had that done by an architect. So, I think the other thing, again, is the lack of transparency in the field development. The staff report approved a 66-foot pitch, yet the one that is built is 100 feet. So I don't know if you know that or not. So this discrepancy highlights why such a significant decision cannot be managed without exact, transparent, and specific use agreements, measurements, and expectations. The other issue is the user group. Every cricket pitch is used every Saturday, every Sunday, everywhere in the Lower Mainland. So I don't know why this particular one, once it's built, wouldn't attract the same. You know, there's no Thursday night games or Monday night games. It's and then also once it's built, there'll be cricket. Bell Park will become the cricket park. So, again, from a grandma to council and to a user in the park and to my amazing neighbors that have all come together and the wonderful spirit of collaboration and communication you've had with us. Hopefully, my recommendation is that we remove the cricket pitch and find a more suitable location.
All right, Councilor Richter.
Yes, so you actually went out and measured what was built, and it's 100 feet when
Yes,
only
ma'am.
66 feet were approved.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Great. So again, appreciate it as always, and I appreciated walking the park with you. I think that was very early, so I appreciate you making the time on an early day to come and walk the park with me. And I think again, you and I had a good conversation about process and other issues. So again, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that's emailed us, and appreciate all the advocacy work on the addition. And I think everybody in the audience can see where this one is going. So I appreciate that very much today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so with no more delegations, so why don't we at 3 o'clock here take a 5-minute recess and resume at 3:05 for the remainder of the agenda. Thank you.
it's gonna get doubled again?
Mr. Skinner?
Dear Worship, Councillor Richter, we'd be proposing in the 2026 to 2030 financial plan additional 24,000 to the operating budget. We wouldn't be proposing any additional funding request other than the 24,000 to expand the drone capacity.
So it will be capped then at 114,000 for 18 minutes of lights?
Through your Worship, Councillor Richter, if there's any further funding request required, we'd have to seek council approval. And because the base budget itself potentially could increase by that 24,000.
Okay, well, I'm going to support it because I think that people in general appreciate not having fireworks, but I'm just concerned about the doubling of the budget, and I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yes, thank you, if I may, through the chair to staff. I'm excited about the drone show. Have you got any idea, if I may, through the chair, how many people attended the drone show last year, if I may?
To your Worship, to Councillor Ferguson, the exact amount for the drone show is not, we don't have that count, but at McLeod Athletic Park, we did have approximately 18,000 individuals attend for Canada Day in total.
Okay, and there's that, and also when we went up to Willoughby, the event center, there was a lot of people. Do you know how many people were in that one?
I believe approximately that was 12,000.
That was very, very successful. I really enjoyed the drone show. And if I may, back to council contingency. It was brought up. It varies from year to year how much we spend, whether we spend 50%, 60, 70, sometimes all of it. I wouldn't expect you to have the exact percentages, but is that fair to say that it varies from year to year?
Through your Worship, to Councillor Ferguson, that is a fair characterization. It does vary each year. Some years it could be that the entire contingency is used. Some year it could be that only 50% or more or less is used. It depends on the request from the public or council direction that's given.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I fully support the drones. As someone who used to dread working Halloween nights or the days and nights before and after, there are way more fires caused by fireworks than people think, and it is a horrible occurrence when you're running around all night putting out unnecessary fires and dealing with injuries. So while fireworks are pretty spectacular to watch, they are very dangerous. So I'm fully in support of the drones.
Do you wish to move it? Nobody's moved it.
I'll move her.
It's moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. So it's on the floor. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, just had one more question. The additional 23,000 that we're going to put into this over and above the, what it was, at 99,000 or however much it was last meeting, could we get more music acts for that kind of money? Because it would seem to me like family entertainment acts of some sort to bring people to the celebration might be a better use of money. Like, I'm just wondering, how much would 23,000 buy us in terms of music?
Through your Worship, Councillor Richter, we could potentially counsel, give staff the direction, explore those options. We wouldn't know the exact cost for any other music entertainment. We would essentially request for proposals to the public to see how much that would cost.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on E1. That carries with Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward opposed. So back to E2, 2025 BC Hydro Sustainable Communities Grant. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on E2? Seeing none, call the question on E2. That carries unanimously. E3, 2025 BC Air Access Program Grant Application. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on E3? Councillor Richter.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I've got the numbers right. We're going to get $2 million hopefully from this British Columbia Air Access Program. And then we're going to put in, is it 545,000 or is it 1.1 million? I'm just trying to figure out the total of the numbers in the second paragraph.
Mr. Cooter?
Your Worship, to Councillor Richter. So essentially, we'd be asking for $2 million from the BCAAP, and then we would be consolidating our existing airport capital, so that would be $642,000 approximately and some change. And then we would be seeking another $475,000 from CPR, Capital Projects Reserve, and an additional $69,000 from Airport Reserve. So that would be the township's contribution.
So if we got the 2 million, we're putting in 1.1 million total from all resources?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I just have a question about what kind of revenue does our airport generate for the township? I know that's a pretty broad. I'm just wondering, like, is this where we're getting, you know, where we can actually pay this money from?
Your Worship, Councillor Kunst, the airport revenue does fluctuate year to year. So, for example, here, as it stated, that the Capital Projects Reserve would be repaid back from the Airport Reserve. So, if we use the 2025 year, we still have not concluded year-end, but we do anticipate a revenue of approximately $200,000 for this year. So that essentially would be used to replenish the Capital Projects Reserve. That would be used as a funding source.
So we generate $200,000 revenue from the Langley Airport. Is that right? I
would characterize it as the airport operating revenue can be approximately $200,000.
Oh, okay. Doesn't seem like a lot, but thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, this is really important stuff to get done. Having been on the task force there and seeing what the conditions are there and explanations by the people that are utilizing the airport. If we do upgrade this, and it is, I think, the largest field of its kind, or the busiest field of its kind, and there are significant commercial things there. I think if and when we improve the airport, we're going to generate a significant amount of revenue over and above what it is right now. But these, it's at the point where it's dangerous now, and we have to deal with these repairs to the airport.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I'm pleased to see this again before council. Early on in the term, I think it was identified that the airport needed some rehab, it needed some work, and it had been left to get to the state that it's at. And I'm pleased that we're taking the action to bring it up to the condition we need. It is a part of, I think, not only Langley's culture, but obviously the economic impact of the airport. The spill-off effects are quite significant. So really pleased to see that this is here today, and pleased to have played a small role in getting it here. And I think the reality, like Councillor Bailey said, is that securing the future of the airport with a project like this gives us the flexibility and the options moving forward to make sure that it's on a financially sustainable path. So looking forward to seeing what we can do in the future at the airport.
Right, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on E3. That carries unanimously. Item G1, Langley fees and charges bylaw amendment. Did you get this, Ms. Little? Did you get that? Yep. Item G1, Langley fees and charges bylaw amendment, bylaw number 6111, bylaw number 6099. I'll move it. Actually, this was deferred, Ms. Little, so it's back on the floor automatically. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so it's back on the floor. Is there any discussion? I do have a couple of amendments. Seeing none, Ms. Little, you can bring those up for me, please. And I'll move them as one amendment. So maybe you can all see, we can't see it on our screens yet. No. I don't think those work anymore. We can see your email now, yep. There we go. So I'll move that as one amendment, seconded by Councillor Bailey. That fees and charges for the super senior admissions and passes be reduced by 50%. Fees and charges for seniors admissions and passes be reduced by 35%. And the proposed Williams Park picnic fee and picnic shelter fees be reduced by 25%. Is there any discussion on those? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm strongly in favor of this. When we reduced the super senior one in the past, it had a lot of uptake. And nowadays with especially seniors being stretched pretty thin, and mental and physical health is a major factor. I can associate with that, believe me. I think this is a great thing to do, especially dealing with their ability to pay now and continue to stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree. Is there any other discussion? This amendment, seeing none, that is on G1. That carries unanimously. Councillor Richter absent. So is there any other discussion on first, second, third reading as amended? Seeing none, call the question on G1. That carries unanimously. I think you can ask Councillor Richter to come back, please. Ms. Little, can you please put up the subsequent motion? It's related to this agenda item, so I think it's appropriate to move it now. That annual licensing fees and multi-year discounts outlined within licensing bylaw schedules A and B be incorporated into the fees and charges bylaw for council's consideration before the end of Q2 2025. I'll move that. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on that associated motion? This intent here is for fees and charges outlined within the licensing bylaw to be incorporated in fees and charges so they can be adjusted without needing to see the actual licensing bylaw. Any discussion? Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Is this part of the previous motion? Because if it is, I shouldn't be back here.
It is not. It is a subsequent motion. It is not an amendment.
Well, I declared a conflict on G1. This says G1.
Ms. Little, maybe you can clarify.
It is a separate motion from the original item, from the fees and charges third reading bylaw.
But it still pertains to the fees and charges.
It is a standalone motion.
So the
It's
challenge,
just associated to the fees
the
and
challenge,
charges
Councillor Richter,
bylaw.
is no one can declare a conflict for you. So if you wish to declare one for this item as well, there's no problem.
G1, I think I'm in a conflict on G1.
All right, Ms. Little, so maybe you could update the labeling from now on since the label seems to be confusing people. Just put an associated motion from now on, okay? Is there any discussion on the unrelated item, associated motion? Seeing none, call the question on that motion under G1. That carries unanimously with Councillor Richter absent. Can we ask Councillor Richter to return again, please? So we're on G2, Facilities Renewal Loan Authorization Bylaw, Bylaw number 6113. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on G2? Seeing none, call the question on G2. That carries unanimously. All right, so we can call the vote again. Ms. Little, if you can void that out, we'll call the vote again. Call the question on G2. I did wait for the check mark, Councillor Richter, so everyone that carries with Councillor Richter opposed. So move on to bylaws for final adoption. I1, bylaw number 6081, 6082. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on I1? Seeing none, call the question on I1. That carries unanimously. Item I2, 2025 Utility Rates Bylaw, Bylaw number 6107, 6102, 6103, 6104, and 6112. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on I2? Seeing none, call the question on I2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. I3, rezoning application number 100436, bylaw number 52045219. Is there any discussion? Anybody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Rint. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Is there any discussion on I3? Councillor Richter.
I just wanted to ask a point of clarification, and that being that, was this an application that started before the provincial government put its housing requirements legislation in place?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so as this is about single-family homes in a designated neighborhood plan, we wouldn't get in trouble for violating the new legislation by voting in favor of this because it had been started earlier?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, the zoning that is proposed is R1D, single-family zoning. So that's consistent with what has been advanced to date. There's no conflict with the provincial legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yes. So is that a typo that these were brought forward in 2016?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Bailey, no. The application's been in progress since that date.
Well, okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on I3. And that carries with Mayor Woodward opposed. Move on to I4, Official Community Plan Amendment, rezoning application number 100278, bylaw number 59645965. I'll move it. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on adoption of the zoning bylaw? Seeing none, call the question on I4. That carries unanimously. Anybody wish to move the development variance permit number 100157? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on the development variance permit? Seeing none, call the question on I4. That carries unanimously. Does anybody wish to make a mayor and council report or a regional report? Jay.
To your worship, Jay went.
No, I missed Jay. So I did. Right, so that is back on the floor. I will move it. Is there a second or seconded by Councillor Rent? Is there any discussion on this? Councillor Rent, go ahead.
I have an amendment.
All right. Are you moving that?
Yes, I'll be moving that.
I'll second it. Is there wish to speak to it?
No, I think it's clear and speaks for itself.
Great. Any other discussion on this amendment? No. Is Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Pratt.
Refresh my memory. Were there multiple options included in the initial report, four-way stop as well as a traffic light, et cetera? I believe there was. Is that correct?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, the option in the report, I believe, was intersection, because the analysis was done was a intersection service analysis and level of service. I believe it might have mentioned four-way stop, but it wasn't an option for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, call the question on the amendment. That carries unanimously. Anything else, Councillor? No. Councillor Richter.
Is this still J1?
Yes, it is.
No, I just wondered why we were reconsidering it, but I guess I understand from the amendment why. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the question on J1 as amended. That carries unanimously. Now, Mayor and Council report, regional reports. Anybody wish to make a report? Go ahead, Councillor Ferguson. Oh, there you are. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First thing, education. I'm back in the education thing. A liquid waste committee, and they're running into more liquid waste or sewage treatment plants, just so people know. They're running into more problems with grease and grease icebergs in our pipes. So people, if you're cooking with grease, you can empty the grease into the green bins, wipe your pan or something with a paper towel and put it in your green bin. First educational note. Second thing, on a very, very positive thing, I attended the Metro Vancouver Parks Committee, and Langley was very much so in the agenda. One of the Langley Parks Foundation, which Mr. Mayor, I believe you're on as well, the Regional Parks Foundation as well.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore. I relinquished that
Not
appointment
committee,
for
I'm sorry,
others
but
to
anyway,
have that opportunity.
the chair of that committee is not only an our Langley resident, Mr. Mark Vanderzam, who's well knowledgeable for parks and nature things, and he's got a background in landscaping, and so he is a chair, and they are going to be doing a tour of just the Langley Regional Parks. I think we've got over 5 with a potential other one coming up. And we're very, very appreciative of all the things staff and the mayor and council have done regarding regional parks. So I wanted to bring that to attention of the mayor and council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on any of the reports? No, so now move on to items for information. Any discussion or questions on N1 through 7? Nope, seeing none, move on to motions arising from information 01. Does anybody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Any discussion on 01? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I was wondering when the report from staff comes back, well, first of all, will there be a report? And if there is a report, will the report address the costs as well as any potential conflict of interest between committee members and resolutions?
Your worship to Councillor Richter, staff will be, based on the motion and staff's interpretation, they'll be bringing a report for council's consideration, including the revised cost estimates and options for council to consider. With respect to any conflict of interest for committee members, we would encourage any committee members to seek a legal opinion in relation to their potential conflict of interest.
Okay, but I just wanted, because when it was discussed at the committee, there was a specific tool or product referenced, and is that tool or product one of the things that's going to be explored, or would we be looking at alternate sources?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, staff will take that item that was considered, that product, and just analyze and review and potentially see if there's any options, and then staff can make a determination at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Call the question on 01. That carries unanimously. Item O2, does anybody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Rint and seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on O2? Seeing none, call the question on O2. That carries unanimously. O3, does anybody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Pratt. Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on O3? Seeing none, call the question on O3.
Opposed.
That carries with Councillor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Nampapta opposed. Move on to O4. Does anybody wish to move that? I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on O4? Seeing none, I'll call the question on O4. That carries unanimously. On to O5. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on O5? Seeing none, call the question on O5. That carries unanimously. Move on to P1. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on P1? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I appreciate the initiative of this motion coming forward. I'm just wondering if I could make an amendment to it, or perhaps it should be a subsequent to this motion. But I was wondering if council could send a letter of advocacy and support for the November 2025 to February 2026 dredging window to DFO, provincial authorities, as well as Kwantlen First Nations.
Yeah, so why don't we make that as, there's no other speakers, you can move an amendment for item number 5 under the therefore be it resolved.
Okay.
I'll second it. Is there any discussion? Councillor Richter, go ahead. You have the floor still.
No, I think, is the issue of cost sharing also going to be addressed? It sounds to me like it will be when this report comes back from staff for the plan. Is that correct?
Mr. Gunner?
Your worship, to Councillor Rector, we would be exploring those options.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, call the question on the amendment to P1. That carries unanimously. Now P1 is amended. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Richter? You good?
I'm just wondering, is it necessary for us to address the issue of cost sharing on the funding on this now, or is that a matter that can come back after the report is done? I believe there is a good case for a township being a participant in the funding, and I didn't get the impression from the delegation that the funding needed to be addressed before all the permits were applied for. And so that's why I want to see this move forward, get the permits and worry about the funding later.
Mr. Gunner, do you have any suggestions?
Through your worship, to Councillor Richter, staff will still explore ongoing options for cost sharing. That's and that would be in preparation of the report to council in any event. And as a part of the cost sharing items, we would be looking at the provincial, federal, Port of Vancouver, and even Metro Vancouver to see what has been done historically and whether those options are available for us to consider. So those discussions would still continue and be ongoing regardless of when the report to council will be coming.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other? Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. I know staff's done quite a bit of work on this particular item, and they've been working on it for quite a while. I did ask Derek Mitchell from Kwantlen about that answer, which he gave, that they were happy to see the permits come first and the funding envelope and all the other things that go with it, grants, etc., would be afterwards. But the permit first was what I understood. If I may, through the chair, was that not correct?
Dear worship, to Councillor Ferguson, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other discussion? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, how quickly could the letters of advocacy and support be sent out? Can they be done like in the next couple of weeks?
To your worship, to Councillor Richter, staff may suggest that we send those letters. Either we accompany the application itself, because we are looking at spring 2025 to submit our application to the Water Sustainability Act for the approval. So once the applications and permits are submitted, then subsequently or concurrently, the letters of advocacy or support are submitted as well to the appropriate minister.
Okay, thank you.
I'll call the question on P1 as amended. That carries unanimously. Item P2, I'll be moving the amended version. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on the amended version? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really having a quick look at this. I'm in support of it, and I especially like the fact that it's going to go to another open house. The last ones were pretty lively, and I'd like to see what the people who live in the area think of this version of it.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I was hearing a lot from people that live in the area and a lot of concerns about their property and the values of their property. So I'm glad to see that, you know, we've narrowed it down a little bit. I also wanted to, at the very end, it says staff present to council on its options regarding the operation of the expansion of the Vancouver Ready Mix. And I'm just kind of wondering if, you know, when and how that sort of, yeah, if you could like speak to that, because I know that that was one of the amendments that you made.
Yeah, so it's in there because their people are bringing it up in the context of the Fraser Highway Employment Lands Area process. So Mr. Cooner, do you know the timing of when you'd be able to, staff would be able to potentially look at getting that presentation to council?
Your worship, just due to the legal non-conforming use and the history behind Vancouver Ready Mix, we would obviously have to take that item to closed and potentially seek further legal opinions on it. We maybe anticipate within the next few meetings to bring that to closed.
Yeah, so I think the intent of the motion, however, once maybe it's enclosed, would be to have a public presentation, because I think there's a lot of discussion about some engagement that the proponent did with the community with no follow-through that I'm aware of. So there may be a perception that there's an application occurring, which there's not, that I understand. There's no plan to relocate it that I'm aware of. There's no necessarily legal options for the township to do anything about the current operation, given its legal status.
Yes, that's a fair characterization of it at this time.
So I think it's important to get on the record what can be discussed publicly to clarify what's going on, what the township's options are, or what there aren't. And so if there's a perception that the Township Council is trying to advance that's not correct. What it's trying to do, I think the intent for this is to have a public documentation and public record of the history of the application, its current status, what was presented at the open house, and get that to council in a presentation form, and then outline what the options are as much as can be discussed publicly, which there are very few.
Yeah, no,
and I think it's important to get this on the public record and make council's position clear through a public process.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm glad that that's going to happen, because there's a lot of people, you know, wondering about that. So I'm glad that that's
and I think it's good to document this as much as we can publicly and have council weigh in on what it may or may not be looking for. Right now, it's currently proponent driven, and I think it's time to make it a bit more balanced.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I too appreciative of the fact that this notice of motion revised has put us in a situation where we can get the extra public information and session of some sort. But it's important as we move forward with the Fraser Highway employment land, this is something we really haven't done an awful lot of in the past. Looking back into our employment land, Gloucester or Northeast Langley and some other parts throughout the community. This is a reference plan for moving forward for the future. And I think that we've got to go forward in the future. We've got to get it right, because not only is it up to the Township of Langley Council, but it's up to the regional district to see that we've done our homework, we've done our due diligence, so that we can put together a plan for the future that is beneficial to all. And those are my points. Thank you.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I had a question about I guess it's the third last paragraph. Council endorses completion of the plan and if endorsed as a framework, if approved in principle by council. Now, what is the interpretation that staff has of that? So I guess what I'm asking for is if we're going to have this third public open house, we haven't given anything third reading yet.
Yeah, I think it's my motion, so I'll try to address that if I can for you, Councillor Richter. So it's important to note that there are two elements. There's a reference plan, which Councillor Ferguson just referred to, as opposed to bylaw readings, if so endorsed by council. Then there would be individual applications for amendments to the Metro Regional that only go to Metro Vancouver if so approved in principle by council at a third reading. So it's referring to two separate items. The first portion of that paragraph is referring to the reference plan, and the second, approved in principle, is referring to potential individual rezoning bylaws if so approved in principle at third reading.
Okay, so in other words, you're interpreting third reading as approved in principle.
That's what third reading is.
Of a bylaw.
That's what third reading is, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any other discussion on P2 in its amended form? No, call the question on P2. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Councillor Martins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our regular council meeting of December 18th, 2023, council voted unanimously to send a letter of advocacy to the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, requesting that the Township of Langley be included in the list of municipalities receiving mobile integrated crisis response teams, previously referred to as CAR 67. From our staff report, the intent of these teams is to ensure that at their most vulnerable time, people in distress receive a health-focused response in connection to the services and supports they need on their pathway to well-being. Responding to mental health challenges with compassion and appropriate care can result in improved outcomes for patient health and diagnosis. As RCMP are primary responders, the addition of the psychiatric nurse in the vehicle adds professional expertise for providing care to people in mental health emergencies and to link them with health agencies for ongoing help. With better coordination between police and social support services, the aim is to produce more effective, longer-term solutions for persons experiencing mental health issues. Last week in Langley, there were 3 high-risk mental health-related incidents in one day, involving the RCMP, fire, and ambulance, with approximately 30 first responders deployed to each call. This again highlights the need for better mental health supports in our community. The Langley RCMP have set up the framework for the MICRO program. They have established a mental health unit with officers and vehicles assigned. Unfortunately, the passenger seats in those vehicles remain empty. With a MICRO program in place, those seats would be occupied by psych nurses, mental health professionals. This resource needs to be funded for the sake of our community. We are fortunate that those 3 high-risk incidents resolved without injury. Let's not tempt fate. My hope is that our provincial government will expediently fulfill their promise to bring the mobile integrated crisis teams funding to Langley.
All right, so we have other speakers. Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
So this is not in reference to that, but I had a question about, with respect to the delegation that was brought forward about Bell Park. I don't think there was a motion.
No, there's been no action taken as of this point. Yep.
Can I make a motion to refer that? Okay.
Yeah. So you could also suspend work. You could ask for a report to council or an item for information, but maybe a motion to suspend current work until council gives further direction would be appropriate as part of any motion. So to clear that staff are to stop.
Okay, so I'd like to refer the delegation about the cricket pitch and the concerns of the residents, which would include what you just said, to staff to explore other parks that are better suited for playing cricket.
Yeah, and I think it'd be explicit. Mr. Cooner, you would want some explicit in the motion, I believe, to cease work.
That is correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, so
Yes,
if you could
cease work, those are the two words that I
Yeah,
was.
and to cease work on the current cricket pitch installation currently underway.
Okay.
Is that fair? All right. So is there a seconder to that? That's seconded by Councillor Bailey. So go ahead, Councillor Coons. You have any
Yeah,
more?
no, that's all I think we all heard about at length.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll support the motion, and I guess it may or may not require an amendment or another motion, but a review of the facilities that currently exist in that league, I think would be helpful, because for myself, looking at some of the other facilities that are used in the league and some of the differences and similarities to Bell Park, just on a cursory level, were helpful. But I think if there was an in-depth review, maybe by staff, of those facilities, because when I look at the facilities that exist in the league currently and sort of the rules, the international standards for cricket that we're aware of, they don't seem to match up. So I'm wondering if there's differences in rules in the league that are from the international level, because some of these parks that I saw are quite tiny. And so I'd be curious to know if there's differences in that regard as well. I don't know if that requires a motion or if that can be sort of taken under advisement as part of that report.
I mean, I think why don't we consider that subsequently? If council supports stopping it, we could look at maybe restarting it at some point if you want to get more information. I hesitate because that information, I think, was clear in the report. So we could ask for that to be clarified further. Mr. Cooner, do you have any suggestions?
Through Your Worship, we could essentially, when we come forward with the report to council, we can attach the history, and the history included some memos to council and a report to council, which might have included options in relation to current facilities, including Brown Park, that does use cricket, and the regulations they use, and the amount of allocations that are allotted to them, so that council is well aware of the current dynamics in relation to cricket within the Township of Langley.
Do you have a clarification?
Yeah, sorry. The question isn't pertaining to the report that we already saw, which outlines some of the other options that were explored within the township. I'm sort of referring to the Mainland Cricket League that this team would theoretically be joining, reviewing some of the other facilities across the Lower Mainland that are used by the league and teams within the league to sort of explore similarities or differences between those and some of the facilities in the township that may or may not be considered. Because if we're building it, like the gentleman who was the delegate referred to the Stanley Park facility at Brockton, obviously not comparable, but some of the other facilities that are used in the league are similar neighborhood parks perhaps, or potentially, and so I'd be curious to see what differences or similarities that exist between current facilities and the potential facilities in the township.
Mr. Cooners, we could deal with that subsequently. We'll come back to you for that, because I think there'd be some good information maybe from that, Mr. Cooner, looking at where teams within the league that this group specifically looking to join, exactly what sizes are those fields?
Through Your Worship, I believe the report to council would address that, because the current Brown Park does have Langley Lightning Cricket Club, which is a part of BC Mainland Cricket Club. So they are currently operating at Brown Park, and they're part of that same cricket league. So therefore, we would have the dimensions and the exact sizing of the field already available for our knowledge and to advise council.
And it's interesting to me because Brown has a playground adjacent to it in a similar way, maybe further away, but I think it's important that not, if this process is going to be embarked elsewhere, that we go into it with clear identity of what's required, and not go through this a second time based upon trying to locate something where maybe it doesn't fit or it's perceived not to be safe. So, because I don't believe our staff would propose something necessarily unsafe. So I think it's important to clarify that, I think as I said to the delegate, it may not matter, right? If they perceive it to be unsafe, then it's unsafe. And so I think it's important that maybe if we look for alternatives, that maybe we have much more clear information about what this group is looking for if they're unable to use Brown. Because my understanding also, Mr. Cooner, they require a separate home pitch.
That is correct, Your Worship. Yeah. I believe Brown Park is home to 2 cricket clubs already.
Yeah. So I think we're well on the path to try to solve this, at least for Bell, but then continue to work on the problem of providing recreation to everyone in the Township of Langley, but in the right location. Councillor Pratt?
I just want to confirm again, because so I understand, Brown's utilized within the league already. But in sort of the research I was doing back in September leading into the vote on that, sort of identifying some of the other parks that were used in the league. There's one in Chilliwack that I'm thinking of. There's one in Surrey that are very similar to sort of the type of park that Bell is. And I would wonder if the staff can try to identify, how it works in those municipalities and how sort of parks are identified elsewhere. Because again, I don't want to go through this again and not have.
Yeah. So maybe you're speaking already to the subsequent motion you're going to make. So we can have, you think if we're clear that we look if we're ceasing work at Bell, and that's council's decision based on the community's wishes, that would be separate from the investigation you may want to get started to find an alternative. So why don't we come back to this once we dispose of the current motion, which is essentially to cease work. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the current motion could be read back, and if the current motion includes not just stopping work or ceasing work, but also removing the pitch that's been put in there.
Mr. Cooner?
Staff's interpretation of it right now would be to cease any further work and then report back to council and seek further directions.
Okay, so what is the motion? What is the actual wording of the motion? Can we see it on the screen? Or no? Okay. Can you read it to us?
That council refer the delegations regarding the cricket pitch at Bell Park to staff to suspend current work and explore other alternatives of parks.
Okay.
I believe it was cease, not suspended. That was, yeah.
Cease.
Yeah, okay, so that's good. Maybe Councillor Pratt's content is more applicable than I realized. Can you read past the last portion, the last clause, please?
And explore other alternative parks.
Yeah, so maybe, Councillor Pratt, your thoughts, if you wish to amend this to be more clear, that would be fine, because I don't recall that portion. So if you want to make that amendment, we can come back to you after some other speakers. If you're looking for something more specific than just looking at other parks.
Yeah, so I wasn't quite listening there. I'm trying to write a...
So Councillor Richter has the floor, but I'll come back to you. No rush, we'll come back to you. Councillor Richter, you have anything else?
Yeah, so the pitch, which they don't want there because of a potential tripping hazard, can staff at least assess any potential liability out of that when they report back?
Staff will look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kunst?
I think related to that, would we cease and also repair? Or would we just, is it good as it is?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Cooner, we could, I think we understand that if we're not finishing the installation, then we're not going to leave it half-built, so that you would probably come back with something along the lines of presenting council with the option to remediate.
That is correct.
Yeah, I would think that would be a given, yeah.
Great, thanks.
But it's good to clarify. Is there, Councillor Pratt, I'll go back to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was writing as if it was going to be a subsequent motion, so...
We'll work with it.
So I have something along the lines of that council request staff provide to council with a report on other facilities used in the Lower Mainland Cricket League. And I hadn't quite finished it yet, but trying to identify similar pitches.
I think Mr. Cooner can listen to the commentary, and as long as you've got the reference in there, I think that's clear.
Yeah,
enough.
so is that an amendment to the motion?
An amendment to the referral
Okay.
motion, yeah.
So I'll move that.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Councillor Martins.
One thing I was hearing with the delegations today is it seems to be the conflicts between the park use and this sport. So I just want to make sure that we're not limiting our options of where we might want to consider placing this pitch to our existing parks. Is it necessary that we keep carving space away from naturally used parks for sport, or is this motion open-ended enough that we could consider creating a space that's not already being used?
Yeah, I'm going to clarify a couple things. The park is being maintained to an athletic standard, so that field is an athletic field. So it is not taking nature spaces away for athletic use, but the neighborhood may be using it in a different way. So I think it's clear that staff have already presented the Township of Langley options for you to consider for cricket in previous reports.
I'm actually speaking to Councillor Pratt's motion. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the reality for me was when I was looking at different pitches across the league, some of them are on neighborhood park fields that are even closer proximity to homes and even smaller. So that's why I was able to make the call that I did. But I don't think it's limiting in the sense of I'm just asking for a report that details the other pitches in the league in general. So what kind of parks are being used for these kinds of facilities, and then from there, having that information, I think all of us can collectively move forward and say, maybe we choose a park like this, or maybe we find a space like this elsewhere across the township that could be used for it. So I didn't write it to be limiting. If I'd be curious to hear from staff if they find it too narrow in scope or not, but I think that's, for myself, it was written and moved to be open-ended.
So is that the case? Because that, like I said, that would be my reservation, is we're looking for at specifically neighborhood parks, and another one to carve out space for a sport where the park is already being utilized by the neighborhood. So this leaves us with some options to look at.
Yeah, no, the council
neighborhood parks.
Staff have presented a range of options to council already. I mean, if you have those reports already.
My question is directed at Councillor Pratt's motion that he's requesting information from staff. And that's why I'm trying to find out if it's going to be limited to only existing neighborhood parks is where we're looking at our options.
Yeah, okay, I've asked and answered. I'm going to move on. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah.
Councillor Richter, go ahead. It's just going around in circles. Go ahead, Councillor Richter.
No, I don't think that it's clear to me either. So could the motion please be reread, or the amendment motion be reread?
Yeah, I have it here.
Oh, we'll let the clerk read it back. Go ahead, Ms. Leto.
That staff report on other facilities used across the mainland by the Cricket League and provide other details.
Is that good?
Yeah,
so okay, so you want to clarify what you moved? Go ahead.
So the motion that it was written and moved and seconded I have is that council request staff provide to council with a report on other facilities used in the Lower Mainland Cricket League.
Okay, well, if that's the amendment, what's the intent of it? Is it to look for justifications to put these parks into these playing fields into neighborhood parks? I mean, the message came through loud and clear to me today. This is not a safe sport for small spaces.
Go ahead, Councilor Pratt.
I think the intent is very clear in that I want as much information as possible regarding the facilities that are used in the league, so that if it comes back to this table and the same user group or different user groups ask for a cricket pitch to be located somewhere in the township, I'm familiar, and all of us are familiar with the type of facilities that are used in the league, so that we can more accurately make a decision, and that next time we don't feel that we have to retroactively fix something that wasn't necessarily the desired outcome in the first place.
Yeah, no, I think it's clear, Councilor Pratt. I don't understand. Councilor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not in this motion. I'm not hearing any reference whatsoever to neighborhood parks.
No, I agree, Councilor Bailey.
So I don't understand why this issue is coming up. It's looking at the current facilities right now, and we have a look at where they are. There is no reference to limiting. I find it very open-ended.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to call the question on the amendment to P3. I guess this would be P3. All right, so I guess that is carried with Councillor Richter opposed. We go back to the main motion as amended. Yeah, I'm going to call the question. I think we've gone around in circles enough. I'm going to call the question on P3 as amended. I've called the question, Councillor Richter. Yeah, and as per the council procedure bylaw, I've determined I'm calling the question. So that you can vote or not vote. It's up to you. I'm not about voting. I would like to speak. I've called the question as per the council procedure bylaw. I'm calling the question. I'm voting in favor. Is anybody? What's your point of order, Councillor Richter? The motion's been read back multiple times, Councillor Richter. So I've called the question. If you don't wish to vote, that's fine. But I've called the question. I understand. I've called the question. So you're voting or not voting? All right, so I'm calling the question. That carries unanimously. Okay, so we're back to other business. Cleared the queue. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yes, if I may,
Go
I
ahead,
would
Councillor
actually
Ferguson.
like to, got caught off guard. Somebody actually, for so much passion on the Bell Park, somebody actually phoned me during the meeting, and of course, we don't take phone calls. But I was caught up between 02 and 04, thinking it for information. I would like to reconsider 03
Okay.
in the council agenda.
That's Ms.
Reconsider.
Little.
Move to reconsider.
Ms. Little, there's something going on, or are we good? No. Okay, so I'd like to move reconsideration of 03 and move that. Used to move that.
Yes, I am
Second
moving that.
Yeah, move. Okay, and then is there any other discussion on 03? It's been reconsidered. No, I'll call the question on 03. No, it's automatically reconsidered. And that is
Cancel.
opposed, yeah. So that is defeated with Councillor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Bailey, and Councillor Ferguson opposed. Councillor Ferguson, did you have any other business? Is there any other business?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a quick piece.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Van Popta. I think I'm missing your hand. Can you raise your hand with Zoom? So then I wouldn't miss it.
It's hard. Yeah, I can.
But go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay. Just wanted to respond to Councillor Martin's inquiries into CAR 67. I did look into that with the budget this past week, so it is on my radar that when anything that's funded under 50 million doesn't show up in the budget. So I am doing some digging around to make sure that we get answers regarding that program one way or the other. Just thought I'd let you know.
Yeah, appreciate the update. I understand it's not currently funded. Is that correct?
It's not currently identified.
Yeah, not
So we have to go into the estimates process to find out if it's actually included in a bigger pool of money.
All right, great. Appreciate the clarification. Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Councillor Van Popta, thank you very much for your advocacy at the provincial level with regards to CAR 67 or the micro teams. I appreciate you looking into that.
Great. Is there any other business? No, so I would get a motion to resolve in a special close. Does anybody have any items to add? Ms. Little, I have an intergovernmental item and a property item. All right, so I get a motion to resolve in a special close, moved by Mayor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Rint. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Thank you.